but let's switch focus. We have Joseph Anantraju, who is the co-chairman and CEO at Happiest Minds, to talk to us about what the impact of AI could be on their business. Joseph, great having you. Put this into perspective. Give us a sense on what this means. These new plugins that have been introduced by some of the AI startups sitting in the US, how much of it will impact your business? And I'm not saying negatively, I'm saying overall, what's the kind of impact that you're going to see, at least in the near term, just to kind of set the context?
Sure. So I think when you're talking about the plugins, you're talking about Anthropic and others who announced, the legal plugins and other plugins, right? And the way I look at it, I'm keeping out the Claude Code and Copilot and the automation tools or code automation tools. But these plugins, I believe, will be a positive for the Indian IT services industry because some of the customers would want to build their processes leveraging these plugins will need somebody to capture the requirements and then convert them into software leveraging these plugins. So our view is that these plugins would actually give the Indian IT industry and companies like Happiest Minds, which have a focus on AI and Gen AI, another stream of opportunities from which we can get business.
Won't it reduce the number of man hours that that you will likely clock for your clients? And because a lot of, at least the traditional IT, I'm not so sure as to what percentage of your revenue comes from man hours, but I would likely expect that it will be a significant chunk. And because man hours will likely go down, do you believe that it'll have an impact on revenue? And if so, how much?
So, I have a contrary view, actually, because I believe that, if you take just talk about the plugins, and I'll come to a couple of other areas in a minute. But if we just look at the plugins, and if customers are making the decision to leverage these plugins and have a customized software solution, these are all opportunities that we wouldn't have got. It would have been captured by, one of the software product or SaaS companies. And even though the effort that is required will be lower than what it would be without these plugins, there's all new stream of revenue, opportunities that we typically wouldn't have got in most cases, right? And therefore, I believe that it will be a net positive in terms of revenue, and it won't detract from the overall business.
Interesting. So, Joseph, does life really change for you? Would it then impact the traditional hours-based revenue model of the industry? Are you pivoting towards a more delivery-based model at all?
So, a couple of things. If you look at it, and now you're looking at, I assume, more from a Copilot productivity tools, like Claude Code and other things. There are two parts to it, right? One is obviously it will reduce the amount of effort required because it's a fair bit of automation, code automation, or the engineering lifecycle automation that would come in, and we will need less effort to deliver the same, functionality and code. But what it will also allow us to do is to tap into some of the problems that have existed that customers have not dealt with because of either the perception of risk or the cost. Like if you take tech debt or legacy systems, if you look at systems that have been built a long time back, have a lot of business logic embedded in them that are critical to the functioning of an enterprise, and which they would look at as a risk if they had to bring it onto newer architectures or to newer technologies. And since they wouldn't have done it because of these risks or because of the cost, right? Those things become open now. And as we speak, I'm sitting in Denver today and met with a customer where they're looking at several large tech debt and modernization initiatives because they feel that they'll be able to do it for a much lower cost and therefore make sure that their technology stack is up to date and modern. It reduces the security risk. It makes it more open. They're able to leverage data better. So a lot of advantages they would be getting. I think it's all about how we identify these opportunities, what segments of the the enterprise and pursue them.
And Joseph, give us a perspective because I'm trying to get a sense on the near-term impact. Excuse me. What percentage of your top line is man-hour driven? That's the first part. The second piece is what's your average contract duration broadly? Because you likely have contracts which are locked in. So I'm trying to understand from your business perspective what the impact could well be.
So, around 70 to 75% of our business comes in the form of either a T&M or an external engineering model. See, with many of our customers, and I've explained this in the past as well, since we work with customers on their platform, and in many cases, we've helped them build their platform grounds up. And on an ongoing basis, they keep adding features and functionalities, whether it's customer driven or addressing competition, or just because technology is evolving for multiple reasons, they keep adding features and functionalities. And in the 70% that I talked about, most of it is as an external engineering partner. And so it continues. So the concept of a contract duration really, doesn't have as much of relevance out here. Like if you take, in our top 10 customers, I think all of them, barring maybe one, has been a customer of ours for more than 6 years, right? And if you take the top 3 customers, they've been with us for 9 to 10 years, right? And we've been working with them as an external engineering team. So therefore, the concept of contract, there are some fixed price projects that we have. When they get over, you look at either support or you look at the next version of that platform. But the T&M kind of a relationship is mostly an external engineering team, and so we continue just working with them as long as they have enough requirements and work that they've identified.
Okay. And how should give us a perspective on how should one therefore look at what happens to your workforce as a whole? Does it shrink slowly, gradually? Give us a sense of how that plays out, because obviously the efficiencies of AI will likely start getting built over a period of time. And I know that pretty much everyone we've been speaking with comes back and says that the workforce won't shrink, but it's not making sense. So give us a perspective of that.
So, at least I can talk about last year and this year, because if you look at our quarterly results, every quarter we've shown a net increase in headcount. So we've been adding net headcount, and as we are drawing up the plan for next year, that is what we are also planning for next year. Incidentally, we're targeting for double-digit growth for next year from a revenue standpoint. You had asked a question earlier, what kind of impact we see from all of this tools that are plugins that are being made available. So we've done a account-wise mapping, and we're quite confident that we will be able to, especially given the AI first strategy that we've adopted, we'd be able to deliver more than 10% growth. Now, as far as the headcount is concerned, as I said, at least for next year, we're not planning any reduction. In fact, we're planning a pretty healthy additional headcount. One thing I'm seeing with quite a few customers, Harsh, is that they've been encouraging us to use either a Copilot or a Cursor or a Gemini, and they have quite a lot of backlog, either in terms of new features, functionalities, or tech debt that they've not been able to address, and they're beginning to churn these backlogs. And they, the reassurance they've been giving us is that even if your productivity increases, and with some of these customers where we adopted Copilot a year back, we're already delivering around 20-25% increase in productivity. In fact, for one of the customers today, I was just going through all the data because we started adopting Copilot here a year back exactly to the day. And I just want to make sure I had my numbers. And, if you look at the number of user stories that we've been delivering sprint on sprint, that's gone up 20-25%, but the team size is still the same, and there's enough work to be had. So at least for this year, I'm very, sure. And as I said, there's enough other areas and opportunities, as modernization and legacy systems. a lot of customers, as they start leveraging AI, they realize that data is an issue, whether it's data quality, data governance, data that are in silos. So you got to pull them all together. So there's what I see is there's enough work to be had, especially for a smaller and mid-sized company like Happiest Minds.
And you spoke about how you're having active conversations with clients. Talk to us about how clients are responding from a fee perspective. Are the negotiations now becoming or tilting more towards fixed rated contracts? Is that the direction in which you and the sector is kind of evolving? What are clients asking in terms of fee discounts, if at all? You're moving away from the man hours concept, or are you still sticking to man hours? Is that really the trend that's playing out?
So it's a mixed bag, actually. So we're seeing some customers move into a fixed price model. And that's something that even we would want to do, especially where there's clarity in terms of requirements. Because if it's greenfield development and the customer wants to take an MVP kind of an approach where you build something, take it to market, get feedback, or sometimes even during in the middle of a product release, they would like to showcase it and make adjustments. So it becomes a little difficult there. But if you look at some of the areas like testing, or if you want to automate the whole test process, or you want to do anything on migration from one version to another, or you want to move architecture to microservice-based architecture tech debt, there you can definitely take a fixed price approach. And I think it's a good model for both customers and for IT services companies, because we can leverage some of the AI automation tools, productivity tools, and the resulting productivity enhancement that we get, and therefore the cost saving. We would be able to share some of the value with the customer and retain some of the value for ourselves, which wouldn't be possible in a T&M model, because it's capped by your rates. And if you can charge a premium for AI engineers, that is the premium you make. But in a fixed price model, you'd actually be able to share some of the productivity gains, the benefits with the customer.
Right, interesting. Joseph, thank you so much for joining in with all that insight today. Good to be speaking with you.
Thank you, Nisha. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, on that note, let's wind it up right here in this edition of